Welcome to At a Crossroads with the Naked Podcaster. I'm your host, Jen Taylor. This podcast is for those of you who know that you are built with strength and love that is meant to shine through in times of conflict and in times of celebration. Please subscribe, like, leave a review, and connect with me. All the links are in the description, and I personally respond to every comment and every contact. I cannot wait to engage with you. Let's get started. Yay! Today I am here with Lisa Drennan. Lisa, how are you?
I am doing fantastic. I actually keep track of my feelings every day on a chart, and today I was feeling very encouraged. So
that's a great idea. I did that when I was doing foster care. Helps kind of gauge where you're at and where you need to be and how you need to pivot. Your website is your name, lisadrennan.com. And I want to jump in because you have a lot. One thing is you have a book, and I bought your book, but I haven't read it yet, but I'm super excited. You also have a blog, a podcast, you have programs, you have a free event starting tomorrow, which is January 26th, right? Yeah, I had to look at my calendar. So jump in and tell me all about being a mindset and business strategist and everything about your website.
Well, everything is brand new. I rebranded in May of 21 when Holy Spirit tapped me on the shoulder and said, get out of your own way and start serving who you're supposed to serve. And I got the acronym SOAR, S-O-A-R, which I thought was the program, but it was for me, seeking our authentic route to our highest potential. I had spent so much time, looking for external validation and doing what everyone else said I should do. Back in August of 20, when I went on to an online coach, I wanted to write a book. I was looking for my niche, and I met with a coach, and he's outlined my whole program for forgiving the girl inside. And he's like, this is a book. I'm like, I'm an avid reader. I'm not a writer. I'm not an author. He's like, no, this is a book. So I, started praying about it. And before you know, I was sharing my story, which was super hard for me because I swore I would never tell. That's the first chapter of the book. And it kind of evolved from there, but I was so afraid of what people would think of, here I was a ministry leader. I was teaching Sunday school. I was doing all these things churchy, and I didn't want anyone to know what I do. It was in my heart. So I refused. God said, do this. I said, no, I'm not going to take this little, this other path over here. I'm not doing that. So I did everything, but, I did health and fitness coaching. I did lead attraction coaching. I did brand new entrepreneurs, helping them set up their whole, from scratch.
Right.
And I liked it. It was okay, but I knew there was something missing. We always have that hole in our heart. And so in May, God's like, yeah, you need to get out of your own way and stop all this nonsense. So brand new website, brand new program, Divine Heart Alignment Academy, where we just truly look. There's this vicious cycle of emotional self-abuse. We look in the mirror and we beat ourselves up. We'd never give anyone else permission to do that.
Right.
And one of my favorite things to say is, if thoughts were a person and came knocking on your door, would you let them in? Probably not. And if you think about what you're thinking, it's some of the thoughts are external. They come in, through people. We want so much to please, especially our family, our parents, our spouses, our siblings, whoever. We have to one up everyone, and it's not so. We're uniquely made and designed, and we have these beautiful gifts and talents that we don't tap into because we're so busy worrying about what everyone else is thinking that we don't do what we're called to do. And we have this hole that we keep feeding, and we feed it with unhealthy coping mechanisms, or maybe they're healthy. Maybe someone's a workaholic and they might consider that healthy. But I turned to overeating, overdrinking, and overspending. I actually got addicted to 0% credit cards as one of my ways to soothe my hurt inside. And it all goes back to Forgiving the Girl Inside, which is the name of my book, Forgiving the Girl Inside, Finding Balance, Freedom, and Joy fun in your life. So I designed my whole program after the book, finally, and came out. Divine Heart Alignment Academy was born, and it's all about stopping that vicious cycle of self-abuse to transform to peace and joy by inviting God to be your CEO and aligning your self-love with self-forgiveness so that you can live from your heart rather than external validation.
You say something on your website, and I read it because we're both Christian women coaches, and I'll have to find it. Oh, my mission is to help ambitious Christian women entrepreneurs transform the vicious cycle of self-abuse into peace and joy by trusting God as their CEO and truly mastering self-forgiveness. I'm like, man, copy paste to that, right? Like that is really concise and to the point. And I think really what your program, it kind of embodies what your program is. I think that hole that we feel is denial. And you and I, we're talking just a little bit before, and I'm like, sometimes don't you feel like it's like, no, God, I didn't pray for that, so I don't really need that answer, right? Like we're like denial. Like, that wasn't my prayer. Thanks. Write the book later. Okay. And I know when you're working with women, they're like, I want to know my purpose. I'm like, well, what's God tapping you with that you're ignoring? Because often that's a big part of what our purpose is. And this is a great example of that. So.
Yeah. And God is definitely in the details, and he knows our heart. I mean, he designed our heart. And I like to think of it as a head, hand, heart connection. So all the thoughts that you receive, they convert over to this emotion, and then you act on that. You get this result. And we keep doing the same thing over and over again in hopes to get a different result. The definition of insanity is quoted by, who was it? Einstein, right?
Yeah.
And it's so powerful because it's something that I've said over and over again, because I wanted a different result, but I didn't know where to turn. And it wasn't, from 1985 to 2013, I was in therapy and counseling. I read every book on anger. One of my favorite movies is Inside Out. And I have yes. So this is disgust. This is my main personality. And I used to think I didn't even know what a feeling was until this movie came out. And I used to think, oh, disgust is really bad. But then when I watched the movie, I'm like, oh, it's not that bad. Like, there's some positive qualities. Well, then my secondary personality is anger. Like everything spews anger. And I didn't know why, because I never was allowed. I was the youngest of three brothers, and I was never allowed to voice my opinion. Everything was very controlled, and you do this and you do that, and you do what I say, and that's that. And if you do this, then this is going to happen. It's like, okay. So you're constantly like, trying to meet their standards, and they would raise the bar. And I'd be like, okay, I can't do this. And when I actually voiced my own feelings for the first time, my family was like, whoa, what did you just say? Like, who are you and what did you do with Lisa? Right. So it's been like this evolving thing. And it wasn't until 2014 when I connected with a mentor and really started digging into my feelings and getting to the root cause, which I was petrified. I never told my mentor that I had two abortions, and I worked with her for 2 years. And in 2016, when I shared my story, she was shocked. She's like, well, how come you didn't tell me? And I'm like, I didn't trust you. Right. So I worked with a mentor for 2 years and didn't trust her because you never go deep enough. And I realized when you connect with a mentor or a coach, you really, if you could do a group coaching versus a one-to-one, that level of commitment really makes a difference as to what you share and how. But then I realized I have a blocker. Like, if you can't share all the things about you as a coach and as a mentor, then how do you expect to help somebody else heal? Mm-hmm. And what I was running from, like, women who are overweight. Why are you overweight? Why do you keep self-sabotaging yourself? You want to lose weight, you go on these diets, you connect with all these coaches, you do all these programs. You might lose, but then 3, 4 months, 6 months, 12 months, you gain weight back. And you don't know why, because you don't have that connection, and then you start not trusting people because something happened. What did it happen? It might not have anything to do with that particular person, but something back when you were younger. And if you don't get deep enough into the root cause of why you're doing what you're doing, you don't have the healing. So in my program, we do the 7D flip, and we get to the root cause. I introduced an amazing tool, aroma freedom and cognitive behavior therapy, and just asking the why, like going 7 layers deep as to why, and revisiting. We go from 0 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to, like, every 5 years, we go back to the earliest memory possible. And for me, when I first did it, as I was training to be this certified aroma freedom practitioner with the cognitive behavior therapy, it was when I went back to 0 to 5, I didn't even know my parents were divorced. I didn't realize that my dad abandoning us was such an impact on my upbringing. And the way that my parents had split up, and my dad would have the visitation and I would come home and my mom would badger me and
Mhm.
be like, why are you badgering me? So I started hating my father. And like, all I remember of my dad is, you're stupid, you're stupid. And I would be like, I am not stupid, I'm going to prove you wrong. So that was like my whole thing about growing up, was this, let's prove you wrong, and you abandoned me and I'm going to get you back for that. Times like revenge all the way.
I'm an NLP practitioner. You use very similar language, and basically, yeah, you're getting to the root cause of that situation. And I use inside out because they have the little beads of memory that keep adding to each other. And if you can go back to some of those first beads of memory of negative emotion and eliminate that, it kind of like it wipes out all of the other ones. If you're getting really angry when you get cut off on the highway, that's irrational or unwarranted anger. Being angry, there's nothing wrong with rational and warranted anger. People get upset, or sadness. Somebody dies, it makes you sad. That's not irrational or unwarranted. But when those emotions should be here and they're here, you have to really investigate. That's coming from something that's really unresolved in the past, and where that anger all comes crashing forward. If you can go back to that and diffuse it, that there's nothing to come crashing forward anymore. So we're very interesting, aren't we, how we hang on to this stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so now you have a free program that starts as we're recording. It's the 25th of January. It starts tomorrow, and this will be released today, but you have free programs. You have a podcast. I want to kind of go into that also.
Yeah, so tomorrow's workshop is Divine Heart Alignment 7 Deep Flip. We're going to be doing a aroma freedom cognitive behavior therapy session focusing on the one thing. So we really tap into that feeling, like, what's the emotion that you're feeling right now? And if you could do something in the next 30 days, what is it that you want to do? And what is the feeling that you get? What is the blocker that keeps you from not wanting to do it? And a lot of the clients that I work with, external validation is huge for them. They're so worried about, this is what I did in the past, so therefore I can't do this now. So that blocker is really keeping them from moving forward. So we go into this session in tomorrow's workshop and work through that. And of course, I'm going to share my program. It's a 12-month program. And I ask people, say, well, 12 months is a long time. Well, how long did it take you to be where you are? And how long have you been stuck? Our emotions, you start unburying one emotion and getting to the root cause of it, it opens up a whole nother slew of emotions that you didn't even know were there. And to get that healing, like I said, from 1985 until 2013, I just worked with counselors and books. I didn't really make that much of a move. I learned how to do I statements. I learned how to say, I feel. That's it. When I got into a mentor coaching program from 2014 to 2021, that's how long it took me to be able to share my story. The first time I shared the fact that, prior to age 17, I was pregnant 3 times. 2 of those ended in abortion. And I remember crying. I was crying into tears. I was so scared to share my story. And I could still picture myself. It was a Tuesday afternoon. It was 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I was in an audience of 7,000 people. And I started sharing. I was choking up, and tears were streaming down. I had this mucus coming out of my nose. I'm like grabbing Kleenex. I'm like, okay, tears are cleansing. God's collecting my tears in the bottle. And it was so freeing. Afterwards, many ladies had reached out to me. And it just really encouraging to know I wasn't the only one, because we talked about this a little bit. We all think we're the only one experiencing what we're experiencing, and that's not true. And women may experience having an abortion, and I was under the impression, because it was my choice, I had the choice to do that. But a friend of mine said, in Italian, aborto means miscarriage. And even though you made that choice, God knew you were going to make that choice. That soul wasn't ready to be born. And I thought about that and I was just like, okay. And then I actually am studying to get my graduate theology degree. And I took a class called systematic theology. And we explored the why, like getting like, why this and why that? And when do souls come into, the embryo, and when do they actually become, human beings? And it's like, wow. So I really prayed about it, and the Lord, blessed me. But I had religion. I didn't have a relationship with the Lord. So I was so fearful, and that fear drove me into thinking I was a murderer, I was a bad person. So I would cover it up. I would people please. I would volunteer at church. I would do all kinds of things to make me look good, to make me feel good. Because if no one knew what I did, then it would be okay. And I remember when I published my story, I had to tell my older son. So 16, pregnant twice, 17, pregnant the third time. I remember reading this abortion prayer that my mom was Catholic. We were Catholic. And my mom used to get prayer cards in the mail all the time. And one day there was this card called the abortion tree. You hung me on the abortion tree. And I was like, what's that doing there? Does she know? Because I didn't tell anyone, right? So I grabbed it and I went into my room. And I remember reading it and just sobbing and begging God for mercy and forgiveness and apologizing, asking forgiveness for the two babies. And I told the Lord, if I ever get pregnant again, and I'm thinking to myself, why am I even thinking this way? If I ever get pregnant again, I'm going to have this baby. I'm going to honor God with this baby. Maybe this baby will be a priest. Maybe they'll make a difference in the world. I don't know. So when I got pregnant the third time, I was just like, wow, okay, well, I'm having the baby. I don't care. I graduated a year early from high school. So I had the baby, and I was still living at home. And really, my mom and I didn't have a great relationship, very controlling and twisted. She wanted to adopt my child. And I'm like, no, it's my child. I want to raise my child. And I think the natural father was narcissistic, gaslighter, and I got rid of him. And I stayed with my mom in my mom's house for fear. She instilled all this fear in me and control that I couldn't go live out on my own. So I look back at my early momhood and I was like, I wasn't a really great mom because I was so scared and nervous and angry and kind of had a dysfunctional household. But anyways, I never told my son. I told my son that, he had a dad, he had a half sister, and I didn't want him to connect with them like when he was dating, because we all lived in the same area. So I said to him, listen, this is who you're related to, but I never told him about having like the two abortions. So I had to have that conversation with him. So in September of 20, I called him up and I said, this is what's going on. I have to tell you this. And I was really scared. And he was so sweet. He's like, he was like, did you have miscarriages? I said to him, I was pregnant 2 times before you were born. He goes, oh my God. He goes, did you have miscarriages? And I was like, wow, thank you so much for thinking that. I said, no, I chose to abort the babies. And he goes, oh, wow. He goes, that must have been really hard for you. I go, yeah, it was devastating. I just started crying. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I said, I want you to know because this book is coming out and everyone's going to know the story. I go, and I really feel called to help women with that emotional aspect of it post-abortion, because no one talks about it. No one talks about how it affects them emotionally afterwards. And it's one of the reasons why your childhood was the way it was because I was so angry and so fearful and so scared that I was going to have this perpetual punishment that, I just was not. So I apologize for that. But I do believe in the generational curses from the 3rd to the 4th generation. And I want this cycle to be broken. I don't want us to go through this cycle of verbal abuse or emotional abuse. So, let's pray about that and work on our own emotions and our feelings, because he had some issues with anger and things like that. So we kind of made a pact. I have 2 other kids and they had known about it. And so we kind of made a pact that, yes, we're going to process our emotions. We're going to actually identify and we're going to talk about how we feel. So that was a really beautiful thing that came from this story.
I love it. I think there are certain things. First of all, if we're all women and I'm in the store and I'm buying tampons or pads or condoms or every woman that you see is experiencing the same thing. And yet we have some amount of shame or like, sorry, you have to bag that for me. Like, why am I sorry you're bagging my tampons and or stuff like condoms? Like, you're doing what your body needs and what you should do. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. The shame we feel as women for natural bodily functions. And we don't talk about that. We don't talk about pregnancy, miscarriage, what sex is like in the beginning, what it should be like, what it's like in a healthy relationship. We do not have these conversations about miscarriage. And then when you're in the Christian realm, you think, well, you have all this support. Yeah. And you also have a lot more guilt and feelings of failure that I think you need to work through in a different way, because you're not just disappointing yourself or your spouse or someone else. I mean, you're disappointing God, right? That's a little bit bigger. And so we just don't talk about things. We don't talk about, because we're not supposed to get divorced. I've been divorced more than once. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want people to know. Abortions are a huge one. And lots of people have life before they come to Christ too. That doesn't excuse it, but it is a completely different lifetime. And so I think the best thing we can do is have really open, honest conversations about this. And I can't have your conversation. So I'm glad that you are having it. I think it's important to have, like, this is what happened to me. And this is what I went through. And if you're a woman who's gone through this, oh my gosh, why don't we do that more? I just have never understood. So I'm very proud of you for sharing a super difficult story. I kind of want to go back in time and bridge some of the gap. I know that your parents divorced early, and because of that friction, you didn't really have a good relationship with your dad. Did that ever change?
No, both my parents are passed away.
Okay.
They both got remarried. My stepfather I was super close to, and he basically raised me. But back then, I mean, back in the 70s and 80s, blended families didn't exist. We were step families, and everything was separate. As I became an adult, my parents, both sets of parents, actually became friends and started hanging out. And I was like, why didn't you do this when I was younger? So, I have siblings on both sides, and then I have a half sister from my dad remarried, and I have a half sister, and we don't have a strong relationship. We have no relationship, actually. So when my father passed away in 2013, I wasn't even going to go see him, and my mom was like, no, you need to go respect him, honor thy father, thy mother, he's on his deathbed. And I was like, okay, fine. And he was he was on life support, and when I walked into the room, he was trying to talk to me and say something, and I couldn't understand. I'm like, Dad, I can't understand you. And I really didn't know about his salvation, his soul, and being in a Catholic Italian family, you have the religion, not the relationship. And I really wanted to share the gospel with him, but I was so afraid. I didn't really know how. And then we got interrupted, but I never knew what he was trying to say. And after he passed away, I dreamt about him every single night. And I was like, I had never even thought about my father. And we had a shallow relationship. I mean, I would try to have a relationship with him. We'd go to family, reunions. I'd have Thanksgiving dinner. We'd see, like, at Christmas when the kids were growing up. But it was always just so strained, and I never felt like part of the family. I always felt like an outsider. So when after he passed away and I was dreaming about him, I was like, what's this all about? And every single night for like a month, I had a dream about him. And finally I had dreamt about him one night, and I shot up out of bed. I'm like, enough, stop coming to me in my dreams. I don't know what you want. And I don't want to see you. And that was the last time I ever dreamed about him. So that was the extent of our relationship. The most contact I had was in the dream. He just, he just didn't care about us. He didn't, the visitation rights, he would come and get us, and he's supposed to pick us up at a time. He never got there. So 3 hours later, he would show up. So then my mom would badger him to me because he was late. And then when I would come home from our outing, I would get sat in the chair and 20 questions as to what we did, how he acted, where he elected. So I just had this disdain for him. When I got married, I asked him, to honor him, according to my mom, to walk me down the aisle with my stepfather, because my stepfather was there as I was growing up. He pulled my teeth. He's, took me places, was there when I went puberty, when I ran out of, pads, when I was, I had my period, he went to the store and got them for me. So I explained that to my dad, and he's like, "No, it's not his honor. It's my honor. I'm not going to do it." And I was like, "Dad, I'm asking you to do it with him, for both of you to walk me down the aisle." And he absolutely refused. So I was like, "It's your choice." I said, "But I disagree with your decision. If you don't want to do it, I can't make you. But you are more than welcome to walk me down the aisle with my stepfather." So I think that put a further wedge in our relationship. And plus he had two stepdaughters and a daughter. So, still, I still felt like the outsider, and I look exactly like my mom. My mom passed away as well, but every day growing up, you look just like your mom. So
Yeah.
I think when my dad saw me, when his wife saw me, I think that created a lot of animosity. So I think that's kind of why I was shunned, why I kind of felt abandoned by him.
What
So
about your mom? I know that there was a lot of tension about surrounding your dad, but aside from that, what was that like? I'm trying to get up to the point where you're in high school and you get pregnant in a strict Catholic. Where you said East Coast, where did you grow up?
Rochester, New York.
I grew up in Rhode Island. So
Okay.
and I was born in 70. So there's this totally different outlook. I wasn't Italian Catholic, but that's like 98% of who I was surrounded by is Italian Catholic, Portuguese. So I'm very familiar with the dynamic of that in the 70s. So there's a big stigma, and pregnancy when we were growing up was not nearly as common, and it was certainly not talked about very much. So what were things like with your mom, and then take us through growing up a bit, your mom as far as your dad goes and your relationship with her?
So my mom was really upset about the divorce. She was actually excommunicated from church because she
Yep.
got divorced. And she loved the Lord. She loved the Lord so much. And she always prayed and encouraged us, even though we couldn't go to the Catholic Church, she had us go to other churches. So I actually grew up in different denominations. And then when she married my stepfather, they did the Catholic thing and went back to church, and we went back to the Catholic Church. She always made sure that we were taken care of. Both my parents were entrepreneurs. They were cosmetologists, owned a hair salon together. And when they got divorced, we were born rich. And when they got divorced, we became really poor. And my mom came from a rich family. My dad came from a poor family. But when she got divorced, my mom's family was like, "Well, no, you got to do this on your own." So she went through a marriage for a year and a half, moved us out to California, really rich man. That didn't work out. We came back to Rochester, and then had to start her business all over again. So she was a single parent raising four of us, and she just worked really hard and struggled. And we didn't have all the things that we needed, but we had the four walls. We had our housing, our transportation, and all of that. And she would always say, I was a brat, being the only girl. She spoiled me because she wanted a girl so bad, but I was really very strong and very rebellious. I had, from the age of 3 to 7, I was sexually molested by a family member. And when I told her, I was afraid to sleep at night by myself, and she didn't know why. And so I would always crawl into bed with her, and she'd get all upset and yell at me. And, it got to the point when I got to be older, I have two sets of brothers, and my brother that's a year older than me, I would try to sneak in his room, and he'd be like, "No, you can't sleep in here. You have to go sleep in your own room." I'm like, "But I'm afraid." And he's like, "There's nothing to be afraid of." So my mom would be like, "Well, why are you afraid?" And I'm 5 years old. And so I told her, and she called me a liar. So I learned at a very young age not to trust her, because what I said, I was making it up. I'd seen a movie or whatever. And that was kind of how it was. So every time I tell her something, I would either get yelled and screamed at or threatened, and God's going to punish me. And she was very nervous lady. Come to find out, she had a very dysfunctional family. We didn't talk for 7 years. When I finally left home after I had my son, being a teen mom, 18 years old, I left around, I think it was 21. She called child abuse on me 7 times. So my whole entire time of growing up, it was like this love-hate relationship. And I used to have a dream where I was standing at the bottom of my basement stairs, and she was on the opposite side, and there was this fire in between us. And I shared that with her and towards the last of her years. She was really sick. She was always complaining about her health. And I'd get so annoyed. Like, why are you always sick? Like, can't you just be healthy and be normal? Like, stop complaining about your health. My friends would come over, she'd sit them down and give them her whole health history. I'm like, Mom, you're embarrassing me. Like,
Yeah.
no, my friends don't care about your health history. And I remember when I was 16 years old, I was smoking because I had really bad anxiety and I was trying to calm myself down. And for my 16th birthday, I said to her, well, what do you want for your birthday? I want to be able to smoke in the house. She says, you're not going to smoke in the house. I go, well, I want to be able to smoke in the garage then. I'm tired of hiding cigarettes. I want to smoke. She's like, no, you're not going to smoke. I'm like, well, I'm smoking. I don't care. So this is kind of the relationship we had. And she'd want to do things for me, but then she'd get angry, like if I wasn't doing what she asked me to do. So very controlling. When I got pregnant and refused to marry the guy, I got a lecture about how I was embarrassing the family. Like, okay, haven't I embarrassed the family already? And I was like, I don't care. And all I could think of is my mom. If I married this man, he was 3 years older than me, I would have ended up just like her. And I did not want to be anything like my mom. Divorced, struggling. My dad cheated on her. He drank a lot, gambled a lot. He was never home, from what she told me, because I was only 2 or 3 when they split up. And I thought, if I pictured myself marrying this man, and I thought, I'm going to have the same life she has. We're going to end up get divorced. I'll end up on welfare. And no, I don't want that. And I was already on public assistance being a single mom anyways. But I didn't have that stigma of being married to this man that I knew wasn't going to treat me properly. He didn't treat me properly when we were dating for 3 years. So I told my mom, I said, and I had just started counseling for the first time. And I said to my mom, I said, I am not going to live your life. I'm going to live Lisa's life. So I understand that I'm embarrassing you because I'm a single mom, but I'm not doing this. I will figure it out. And I just did. I started working full time and bettering myself, getting better jobs. And she would fight with me like, oh, well, you're living at home. You have to pay rent. You have to do this. You have to do that. And every weekend was go out and find a husband. Go to church and find a husband. Go to a bar, find a husband. Go find a husband. And you want somebody who's rich and you want somebody who knows how to fix things and you want this and you want that. And I was just like, who is she to tell me who I want? And I just got really angry. I was just so angry. Because I was on a man hater hunt after I broke up with the biological father. I didn't want anything to do with the man because this man treated me so poorly. I didn't even know who I was and what I wanted. And I wasn't going to bring somebody into my life that wasn't going to treat my son properly. That wasn't going to happen. So to be told every single weekend that I had to go out, and then when I went out, of course, you're 18, 19 years old, and you're out drinking, you're having fun. You don't think of the time. So I get home 2, 3 o'clock in the morning after the bars closed. And then I would hear her and my stepfather badger me talking in their room about how horrible I am, what a terrible mother I am, staying out drinking all night long. And I'm like, but you told me to go out and meet somebody. And I never went out and met anyone. I just hung out with my girlfriends, had a great time, right? So there's this vicious cycle. Every single weekend, I would get into a fight with my mom. I would go out. I would not meet somebody. And if I did bring a guy home that I thought might be okay to meet my son, my parents would criticize him to no end. They'd give me a list of reasons why I shouldn't be with this person. And I thought, so I was literally living my life for my mother. And even though I didn't want to do what she said, it was almost like I was going through the motions. I was so underneath her wing and controlled. So when I finally made the move to move out, she accused me of abusing my child and putting him in an environment that wasn't safe. And so I had child abuse calling me 7 times, and it really put a dagger in my mom and mine's relationship. And I didn't talk to her for over 7 years. And we had a very love-hate relationship. I would try to talk to her, but she would backstab me. And it wasn't until I was in my 40s and I really started expressing my emotions and my feelings that she started really getting help for herself. And towards the end of her life, I realized that all of her pain was basically transferred to me and dumped on me, and she didn't know how to process it. And so she just did. And she apologized. We apologized to each other and forgave each other. So it was a nice, beautiful ending. But I wish it would have happened a lot sooner. So our family dynamics probably would have been a lot different.
You always had a lot of friction with her. Was there ever a time that she believed the sexual abuse?
No. Mm-mm.
And you were growing up knowing you couldn't trust her, you couldn't talk about it, being afraid. And so get me up to speed, because before your son was born, there were 2 abortions. So I know you've talked about being rebellious and smoking, and lots of us go through rebellion and doing things like that. And that there was so much friction at the house. It was a vicious cycle. So take me through high school and the decisions. First of all, you're sexually active, and then the decision to get an abortion, how that even happened, how you were able to do that, I'm guessing without her knowing.
Absolutely. People did not need to know back then.
Yep.
So Planned Parenthood was right down the road.
Okay.
I was, decided all my friends were losing their virginity, and I met this guy, and, madly in love, big charmer. And his whole goal was just to get another notch in his belt.
Right.
But when I got pregnant, and I told him, he's like, oh, well, you just have to have an abortion. I'm like, no, I don't think so. I think there's adoption, there's this and that. It's like, no, there's just abortion. So I was very docile. He would say jump, and I would say how high. So I looked into it, and a couple of my friends were going through the same thing. So we kind of made a pact. We went to Planned Parenthood and, paid the cash, and they gave me some drugs. And I remember, waking up, and I share it in my book, and not even knowing, I was just so numb, and I hated him. I despised him for even making me do it. But the reason why, I was sexually active, but birth control wasn't an option, because at home, my mom was telling me that birth control was the form of abortion. So I refused to take birth control pills, because I was, you weren't allowed to do that. You had to, in the Catholic religion, you had to practice this harmony thing, but you can't fornicate either. So here I am, in this intimate relationship. I mean, I was 15, he was 18. I don't know what my mom was thinking. I guess she was thinking his mom was watching out for me. But no, that's not the case. And I was making my own decision willingly. When she found out I was pregnant, the third time, which she thought was the first time, she wanted to get him arrested for statutory rape. So I'm not going to, no, it's totally consented. I'm not going to arrest him for that. No.
So this was the same person. You got pregnant 3 times with the same. I got it. Okay. So the second time you got an abortion again, and then the third time you were like, no.
Yeah, the second we also had a love-hate relationship. We fought a lot. So the second time I got pregnant, I was shocked. I was like, because I was doing the rhythm muffin, and I just was like, "There's no way." 16-year-olds don't have it all together.
Yes.
And when I got pregnant the second time, he's like, well, how did that happen? I'm like, hello. He's like, and then he said something which should have made me realize he was cheating on me. Well, I've never seen a girl get pregnant so quick, so many times in a row. I'm like, okay. And I mean, like I said, I was numb. Emotionally numb. So when I got the second abortion, I was totally like, I totally went numb. I started doing drugs and stuff. And I was just like, I really can't handle this. My body can't handle it. I mean, I bled for months afterwards. I'm surprised my mom never said anything about all the bleeding. And I'm talking heavy bleeding. I'm talking like I stopped eating. I went from 110 pounds to 90 pounds. I wasn't healthy. I was smoking like a fiend and drinking like a fiend. But I chose never to be home. So I just kind of hung out at my friend's house and did things. And I started thinking, like, why am I with this guy? He treats me like crap. He doesn't care about me. So I started trying to break away from him. But then that narcissist relationship, I couldn't get away from him. It took a long time. So we actually broke up. He actually cheated on me. He actually slept with my best friend. And I was like, I'm done with him. And then I got back together with him and got pregnant. And so we were broken up, got back. So yeah. So when I got pregnant, I was just like, really? Am I that stupid? Like, how? And then my father's voice, you're stupid. You are so stupid. And so here I am, 17 years old. And I'm like, I told him, I said, you're done. I'm pregnant. I'm keeping the baby. I don't care what you do. You're done. You're out of my life. And I went home and told my mom, well, how did this happen? And, we went through that lecture.
Again, everybody with no knowledge of sex and how it works.
And she's like, well, you're going to have to call your father. Your father's got to know. I'm like, okay, fine. So I was getting child support at the time. And of course, that was apparently a mandated emancipation thing. So we lost the child support, the whopping $20 a week that he paid back then. So my mom told me, well, you lost child support. You have to support yourself now. You have to go get a full-time job. And I was like, fine. So I went and got a full-time job as a cashier at Wegmans, which is one of our huge grocery stores here up in
Yeah.
upstate New York. And, I just did it from there. I did what I had to do and, just lived it that way. And I did, we were engaged. I was engaged to this guy and I broke off the engagement a month before. So after I got pregnant, like 3 months later, he's like, well, I want to stay with you and we'll get married. And we had our wedding date set and stuff. And a month before the wedding, he cheated on me. And my friends had told me that he had been cheating on me all the time, but I would confront him and he would lie to me and, I would believe him. And then I caught him red-handed. And I was like 8 months pregnant. It was huge. And I flipped out on him. I just flipped out on him. And that was done. I was absolutely done with him. I said, I don't care what you do or say. I never, ever want to see you again. And that was the end of that relationship.
Good. Good. Did you finish high school?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I graduated a year early with honors.
Okay, wait, you said that. You said that earlier. I apologize.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to put all the
No
pieces
worries.
together. So you graduated early with honors. You're working a full-time job. You're very pregnant. You call it off. You're still living at home. And when you left is when your mom called CPS on you? When you left
Yeah,
her house?
Yeah, when I moved out of her house at 21, I had tried to move out a couple of times and she totally talked me out of it. Told me if I got my own apartment, I know because I was so young and pretty, I would get raped. It would be really difficult. I wouldn't be able to make ends meet. And meanwhile, my friends were in college at this point. They're like, Lisa, there's so many programs out there that will help you. There's United Way, there's this, there's that. And I didn't know anything about any of that. So I started looking into it and thinking, well, I can get help. I'm a single parent. So I started looking into all of that. And I remember my friend's mother had a studio and she would be lived in the studio was attached to her home. I'd be helping her out. And my mom totally talked me out of it, convinced me that no, this woman didn't really want you to live there. And it would have been a perfect solution. But I ended up meeting my husband. We've been together for 32 years now. I met him when I was 21 and swore I would never live with a man. But after being verbally and emotionally abused by my mom for a year and him seeing it, he's like, you got to get out of there. He goes, that is not healthy for you or your child. So I said, well, I really, I was living paycheck to paycheck. And I said, well, I really don't have a place to go that I feel safe. So he's like, well, just stay with me until you find a place. Well, I just ended up staying with him and we ended up getting married. So.
You're still waiting until you find a place 32 years later?
Yeah.
I joke with my husband. I'm like, I thought when we met, it was just going to be a fun weekend. And it's like, it's a really long weekend at this point.
I like that analogy. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're still waiting to find a good place, a place to go.
Yeah.
And fortunately, this was a better relationship than your mom or your ex-boyfriend, the relationship with your husband.
Yes, he was. Yeah, he was very supportive and respectful. And, even though I would lash out, like I took a lot of my anger out on him, he was very patient with me. There was times when I pushed him to the edge because I could not express myself and I did not feel safe. He didn't know for me that I had 2 abortions until 2016. So apparently when I had broken up with the biological father, he had gotten angry at me when my son was 3 years old. Unbeknownst to me, he told my mom, and my mom never told me. But when my mom got mad at me, she had told my husband. He was my boyfriend at the time, and he never told me. In 2016, when I shared it with him, he's like, "I know." I go, "What do you mean you know?" He goes, "Your mom told me a long time ago when you guys were in a fight." I go, "Why didn't you say anything to me? Because it wasn't my place to say it. Because I figured if you wanted to share it with me, you would have told me." He goes, "I don't
Wow.
want to cross that line." And I was like, "Wow, okay." I said, "But didn't you ever question it? Like, you never wanted to talk about it?" He goes, "No, I figured if you were comfortable enough to share it, you would share it with me." So then we had a nice conversation, like 2-hour conversation about it. And we talked about the experience and all of that. And, you know, and it was actually therapeutic. And it was kind of comforting to know that he respects me that much that he would never even, it wasn't my mom's to tell. And I don't know who else she told, but of course I confronted her with that. And she's like, well, I was mad at you. I'm like, I don't care if you're mad at somebody. You don't tell things about other people because you're mad at them. So I found out later there was tons of secrets in our family. And I was like, you know what? You know when something's off and you don't know quite what it is? I was like in this dysfunctional family for my extended family, and I was like, okay, guys, I know why I'm the black sheep now because you guys just don't jive with what I'm doing.
You meet your now husband of 32 years. Congratulations. And for a while, you said you were smoking, you were drinking. When did you kind of outgrow that? And you were still close with some of your friends.
Yeah, I actually, I wouldn't allow my friends to get close to me because I didn't trust women. I didn't even like women for a long time. I became women's ministry leader of my church, and I was shocked because I was like, my mentor had told me, you are going to so connect with women and you are going to be helping women. I'm like, yeah, no, hell's going to freeze over first. And she's like, no, she's like, you really have a heart for women. I said, I don't trust women. So many women have betrayed me. And she's like, that's going to change. So when I started being women's ministry leader and sharing my story and my struggles and all the women that were hurting who wanted to help, I was like, wow, there's so many out there that I didn't even know, because so many of us put a facade on. We have that happy face, and we hide behind the whatever we're hiding behind, our careers, our clothes. I did a good job hiding behind my career. But secretly, I was always over drinking, overeating. So my whole thing was like, I like to get drunk. I like to numb the pain. So as my kids got older, I had more freedom to do that. So on weekends, I would open up a bottle of wine. And my mom at one point had said to me, you're drinking an awful lot. What's going on? I'm like, oh, I'm fine. I'm not drinking too much. But then I started blacking out. My husband got concerned. He's like, you got to slow down. He's like, what's going on with you? Why are you drinking? I'm like, I don't know. And I would just like literally go in my room and cry for no reason. And that was the only thing that kind of comforted me. And of course, there's wine in the Bible, so you can drink wine, it's okay. So I'm always justifying
That
it.
might be misconstrued just a little bit, but
It's just a little bit, but how we twist things, how we make the Bible work for us. And, so I realized that, the drunkenness was a sin. And I was like, how do I break this habit, and like, why? And again, getting to that, I had done so much healing from 2013 to 2018. I was like, okay, why am I drinking? Why am I overeating? And why am I overspending? Like,
right.
why? So just trying to dig deep into that. And it really took different coaches to help me with different healing tools to help me dig deep into that. I mean, I used art therapy, and I've used CBT. Like, I have a coach that does a lot of CBT and connecting, and I'm a facilitator for a class called The Healing Journey, which was created by Cindy Sherwood. It's a 29-week program, and it's my 4th year going through that. And I've been through boot camp and retreats. A beautiful, it's in depth. It goes through Joseph's story in the Bible and really talks about the dysfunction in our feelings and, what it's like to deal with it. And Cindy she wrote a book called The Healing Journey, and she shares about DID, which is, I'm not going to be able to say this word correctly, dissociative disorder. So where you have the many parts in your body. And you probably know, as being coaches, we get into the woo-woo world, and you have to be careful with Christianity because, you don't want to be the woo-woo. And I was like, people call them inner guides, but she refers to them as this did. And I was like, okay, so this is where people are getting confused with these inner guides, because we do have these different personalities that show up for us when we're trying to cope with things, and triggers happen so quickly. And I didn't realize, like, with my anger, like, I snap at my husband all the time, and he brings it to my attention. He's like, why are you snapping? Like, why are you being mean to me? And I'll stop, and I'm thinking, okay, why? And I have to really dig deep and ask myself, what's going on with me? And then I think of that one personality that was told no, or I couldn't trust, or you're stupid, or so really talking to myself and saying, you got this, Lisa, you can figure this out. It's not complicated. You get to do this. And having that thought process. And when I realized that's kind of like my superpower, and it is so simple, but yet we choose not to do it because we're so afraid just to stop and think. So I have this stir thing where we stop and we think, so ST, And then we identify that feeling and we think about that emotion and then we recognize it and then we choose what to do with it. So we can choose to have it control us, or we can choose to process it, receive it, seek that forgiveness, say, yeah, you know what? I did mess up. I did make a mess of my credit cards and spend too much money on giving beautiful gifts away and doing things that I found enjoyable, but I shouldn't have done it. I shouldn't have swiped the card. I should have used my money in my savings account. So having that conversation with myself and giving myself grace and forgiveness the way God gives us grace and forgiveness was huge for me. And it took some time to do that. And the work was hard because I was journaling, and I know a lot of my clients don't like to journal because, oh, what if someone finds it? Find it. Maybe it'll help you. I don't care if I'm going to write something, it's important to me. If you can read my handwriting, bonus for you. But if you can read my handwriting and you benefit from what I wrote, I'm pouring my heart out. And that's the only way I found true healing, was looking into gratitude and giving thanks for all things. I read Ann Voskamp's book, 1,000 Gifts, Dare to Live Life Differently. I love a challenge. I took her 10 days, be thankful for 10 things and the reason why. And I was thankful for snow. It was like glistening like stars one day. And I hate snow. Being in Rochester, New York, we get tons of it. It's always dreary. I don't like the weather here. And I was walking my dogs one morning, 6:30, all bundled up. It was like -2 degrees. And all of a sudden I saw this beautiful snow like diamonds. And it brought such joy to my heart. And I made it my gratitude. I'm like, if I could be thankful for snow, I can be thankful for all kinds of things. And that really shifted me. And forgiveness is the bridge to joy. Jesus is the bridge to joy. But gratitude is that bridge to joy. Because when you can be thankful, you can really start to feel that joy, that unspeakable joy. And when you invite God to be your CEO and let him in, and you actually realize what it's like to have a relationship with Jesus versus the religion, it's a totally different experience.
Yeah. That's a tough bridge to gap, I think. I mean, having religion or being part of a church or calling yourself a Christian, that part's easy. Having a relationship with Christ, it actually isn't hard, but it's such a shift in your mindset, and it's not the way we were probably programmed, that's not what it looked like or felt like. So with the overeating, drinking, and overspending, you journaled a lot and you had a mentor. What were the things that helped really get you through that, so that those were no longer, because most bad things or habits they can be good if there's balance, and
Right.
lots of good things can become bad if they're out of balance. So, spending, drinking, and eating are not bad things unless it's in excess or for the wrong reason. So I know you talked earlier about being a fitness coach. What was the journey like for you to get from realizing that you wanted to work on your anger and that you had these 3 things as coping mechanisms, and getting through that? What was that process like for you?
It was a long process.
I mean, journaling,
It took,
obviously.
yeah, it took a long time. So, I from 1986 until 2013, I was in counseling. So basically, every 10 weeks, I take a couple weeks off, and I would go through this talk therapy. And I was an avid reader, so most of the counselors would be like, read this book. I read every book on anger and boundaries and relationships, everything you could possibly think of. I connected with, Joyce Meyer. I think I listened to back then it was cassettes, every single cassette she ever produced about the battlefield of the mind and these emotions. And I became so good at counseling other people. People were asking me like, oh, you should be a counselor. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm a hot mess. I can't be a counselor. So I realized in 2013, I was like, okay, I literally locked myself in the bathroom, like, Lord, I need something. I can't do this anymore. I'm just this emotional roller coaster ride. I want peace. And the first meeting I had to connect with my mentor, they asked me, what does Lisa want? And no one had ever asked me that before. I never thought about what I wanted because I was so busy pouring into others, being a mom, working full time, volunteering. I didn't take me time. So they're like, what, if Lisa could have one thing, what would Lisa want? And I sat there and I cried and I'm like, peace. Like, well, how do you get peace? I said, I have no idea. They're like, well, do you trust God? And I started crying because I didn't trust God. And I was like, no, I don't trust God at all. And I was saved in July of 79. And I did not have, like I said earlier, I didn't have a relationship with the Lord. I just had religion. And they're like, well, why don't you trust God? I go, because I'm waiting for God to give me eternal punishment for what I've done. Well, what have you done? I'm like, I'm not telling you what I've done.
Right.
And I'm like, it's just really, really bad. And there's no way. Well, you're forgiven. No, no way. I'm not forgiven, because how do when you forgive, you have to forget. Oh no, that's a lie. What do you mean
Yeah.
it's a lie? So then he's like, you need to explore what words mean. He goes, forgiving does not mean forgetting. He goes, whatever you've done, you're never going to forget it, but you can heal from it. So that's what really got me started, was this one word journey of looking at words. So peace was my first word, and I dug out the definition, the root word, where it came from, what it meant, and I started meditating it, and I started looking for scripture on the word peace. So every year I had a one word journey, and that started melting my heart. I started feeling like, I tell everyone, I had a 6 foot by 6 foot by 6 foot brick wall around me. No one was coming in, and I wasn't getting out. Everybody was guarded. And I felt like the brick wall is starting to tumble. And I'm like, wow, I'm seeing progress for the first time. So when I started exploring the one word, and connecting with my mentor, and really thinking about feelings, they're like, well, what are feelings? I'm like, I don't know. Isn't anger a feeling? Well, anger is usually overall, there's a hidden feeling underneath why you're angry. Why are you so
Right.
angry? So I would start journaling about why I was angry, and all this stuff would come up, all this surface stuff. And none of it ever made sense to me. So exploring that with the mentor and talking about it, but just realizing, every year I had something to add to my tool belt. And I got into, I was really sick. I've had bronchial asthma since I was 2 years old, and I was always sick with bronchitis and pneumonia, walking pneumonia. And I started going through menopause in 2016, and I broke out with skin rash. And I had like red blood spots on me, and I started going to all these specialists. I'm like, what is going on with me? I was at the heaviest weight I ever was. I was drinking all the time. I had started smoking again because I had quit that. And I'm like, I'm a hot mess. And I went to my doctor. My doctor said, heart disease and diabetes runs in your family. He goes, how old do you want to be when you die? I'm like, in my 80s. I'm going to die in my sleep. I already talked to God about that. He's like, you're not going to make it if you continue down this path. So it's your choice. You get to choose. And that made such an impact on me. And I was like, okay. And I immediately wrote it down. I'm like, what does Lisa choose? Does she want to? And my mom and my brother passed away last April. He was only 62 years old. Heart disease runs in the family. They all died of this heart disease, diabetes type of things with complications. And I'm like, they were sick. They couldn't do anything. I'm like, I don't want to be like that. So I made a commitment. I wrote it down. Lisa wants to be healthy. She wants to have a healthy heart and no diabetes. Lisa wants to travel. Lisa wants to do this. And that really helped me. And I looked at that every day, and I said, this is my why. Why do I want to do it? So I kind of, I planned out my 5 years, my 5-year goal, my biggest dream, and I reverse engineered it. And every single year I looked at it and I said, okay, what is it I want to do? And how am I going to get there? And in 2019 or 2020, I was introduced to the aromatherapy. It was a 5-minute session, and it included Ho'oponopono practice, which is a Hawaiian reconciliation. And I'm sorry, please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. I was doing a training. I was a Young Living distributor. And I did this training with this woman for 5 minutes, and we had to focus on something that really was strong and bothering us. And I focused on the one thing and got such a release from it. I was like, what just happened? I need to find out more about it. And implementing that practice opened up so much. It released so many repressed emotions for me. I was like, this is incredible. I got to do this. I got to share it. So that was one of the major tools that really gave me a shift. The second major tool was what we call ULA. So ULA La, the feeling when you wake up, just feeling joy filled and balance, is a program. I became a certified ULA life coach. As a 7 framework, you look for balance in 7 key areas. And implementing that and balancing out those 7 key areas and kind of getting rid of all the other stuff that didn't make a difference really helped me stay focused on my goals. And when I combined all of these tools, that's what created the program. I used it in my fitness program. I used it in my client attraction program, and it worked really, really well. So I still use those today. It's just a combination. It literally takes 30 minutes in the morning to do all the things that I need to do. And I love it because people are like, well, how do you get so much done? I got a plan. I got my daily goal, my action steps. I do my meditation, my aroma freedom. God comes first. I thank him every day for the breath of life and my heart's beating. And I'm like, God, what do you want me to do today? Connect me with who you need me to connect with and tell me what I need to do because it's all about you and I want to glorify you and I want to help women. So guide me.
Finally, after the denial. I love that. The journaling and the
Yeah.
goal setting and the gratitude practice, those are all really huge things that can help you get through stuff. Sometimes I feel like we're just so overwhelmed with all the things and all the feelings. We don't even know how to weed through them to figure out what is it that's really going on today. And I don't even mean the past stuff and going into generational stuff, which I totally believe in. It's just really sometimes the day-to-day stuff too. We don't even identify. We know that we're stressed or overwhelmed, but why? And the journaling and the gratitude practice and those setting goals, those really kind of, you want to cut out a lot of the noise, I think. Right? Is that how it works for you also?
Absolutely. Yeah. Just dedicating time. Like I didn't know what me time until my youngest was 14. He's 23 now. And
Yeah.
when someone told me like, incorporate me time, like take time to do what Lisa wants to do, I was like, I don't have time for that. Well, no, you do because you need to pour into yourself before you can pour into others. So I practiced that. I'm like, okay, so this is going to help me be a better mom, a better wife, a better worker. And that's exactly what happened. So I got up earlier. I got up an hour before everyone else. I would do my prayers, my meditation. So I meditate on scripture. So I take one scripture verse and meditate on that. And then I would do my workout and I get ready for work and start my day. And I was able to do, my mood was, I would smile. Like I'm not a morning person. I'd walk into work, I'd be smiling. They're like, what happened to you? I'm like, hey, I just had a fantastic morning. Like this is what I did. And the morning I wasn't able to do it because I overslept. Instead of beating myself up like, oh, you overslept, do that, I would say, okay, what can I fit in and what do I need to reschedule and give myself grace? Because there's just sometimes like, you don't sleep at night or whatever, for whatever reason, and giving yourself grace. But, even if you are rushed, especially moms with toddlers, take 5-10 minutes for yourself. When I was women's ministry leader, we used to do topical retreats, on topical like prayer and journaling and forgiveness and things like that. And there was this one, we did a prayer retreat, and there was this one devotion I shared about a mom, and you can relate to this because you have so many children, but she had like 10 kids and she lived in a one-room farmhouse, no privacy, and she wanted to pray every single day. So she told her kids, listen, I'm praying for 1 hour every single day. When you see this blanket go over my head, don't talk to me, don't tap me on the shoulder, don't come to me, don't do nothing. If any of you gets hurt, I don't care. Your older siblings can take care of you. You'll just have to wait even if you're bleeding out. Just if you're bleeding out, this is how you stop the bleeding. And I always just thought that was fun because here's a woman just setting a great, beautiful legacy for her family. Like this is the importance of me having my me time, having my prayer time. I need this in order to be able to serve you all and to take care of you all. So really understanding why it all goes back to our why. Why do we need to do this? So when I made it a priority for me time, that really helped me shift. And I was so much more productive because I knew that something was missing before. And now that I was able to take care of myself, I was having more energy. I was feeling, happier and wanting to do what I was doing instead of feeling like, oh, well, we grudge like, oh, I have to cook dinner. Oh, I have to feed my family. I have to go grocery shopping. And it's just like, no, I get to do this. Like, I'm so thankful that there's dirty dishes in the sink. It means I have this beautiful family of these teenagers making a mess that I get to care for, and I would just like look, scripture says to give thanks in all circumstances. So looking at this dirty mess, this hot mess, and saying, what has happened for me because of this? What can I give thanks for in this situation? Instead of our humanness that says, oh, woe is me, this is happening. I'm, playing the victim mode, just getting out of that victim mode and saying to yourself, you know what? I am not a victim. I am strong. I am capable. I am able to make decisions. I am not my own power. I can't do everything on my own. Using my voice to ask for help and processing my thoughts and saying, like, you know what? I'm not going to engage in this negative conversation. Listening to your body. How does it make me feel? Like, you can walk into a room and you can immediately know, I'm not comfortable around this person. I don't know why I'm not comfortable, but I'm not. And you need to listen to your body because your body knows before you do what's going to happen. Like, even like there's podcast interviews I've done, like pre-interview, I'm like, I don't want to be on your podcast because we don't have a great connection. Remember the very first time I went live with somebody, I felt so awkward and uncomfortable. I could not wait till the podcast was over. And I thought, why did I just subject myself to that? I don't want to do that. So really recognizing and listening to yourself instead of we brush it off so quickly. Oh, that I'm going to dismiss that. And then the next thing you know, you look back and it's like, you're never going to change your circumstances, but you can change your perception on what happened. And then forgive yourself and then realize when this happens again, because most likely it will, something similar, I'm ready. And being ready, one of the things that I focus on is fear because I'm so afraid to do things. And I know there's that trust. I mean, I trust God now. I mean, I started trusting him in 2016. And the first time I said, God, I trust you 100%. You are my power, my provider, my protector. I don't know where I've been. I feel so foolish saying I didn't trust God. But as a Christian, I didn't trust God because I had so much religion and so much lies and I couldn't sort the truth. And when you open up scripture, the basic instructions before leaving earth, the Bible, and you understand and you take that scripture into context, because so many people take it out of context to fit their needs. And that's what I was doing. It's like, no, I really want to know what the word is. Lord, I want to know line by line what scripture means. So he put me in an institute where I'm learning to get my graduate theology degree. I'm studying scripture line by line.
Right.
And
isn't that great?
When I look at that, it is amazing because that was like a silent prayer that I had. And all of a sudden I switched churches and I'm going into this beautiful church that teaches the line by line. And words are so important and the root word. And I had a conversation with someone who actually blocked me, unfriended me because they were talking about charisma and charm. And, charisma is peace and joy, right? In the language. And charm is like a single characteristic of somebody. Like somebody could be charming but not be charismatic. And they said, oh, did you realize that, charismatic is from God and charm is a spell? And I'm like, what are you talking about? So I was like, I don't understand what you're trying to say. And they're like, well, look up the word. And I thought, okay, they know that I talk about looking up words all the time. So I looked up the word, I got the Greek definition, I sent it to them, and like, I know what it means, I'm not stupid. I'm like, okay, this is somebody who's following me, that knows the words that I use, that I've shared my story with. And I'm like, no, they're totally offended. So I wrote back and then I saw that they had blocked me. And I'm like, okay, what was that all about? And I just prayed about it. Before it would have totally bothered me. I would have been like, oh no, external validation, this person, like, did I say something wrong? Like, was I nasty? I'm like, no, this is their own thing. They got caught up. For all I know, they were a woo-woo person. They were into the spiritual realm of things and they were trying to trip me up because, I believed fully in spiritual warfare. And I thought, okay, Lord. And I talked to my husband about it. I'm like, do you know the difference between charismatic and charm? He's like, yeah. And then he told me, and I'm like, okay, I'm good. It's like,
right.
Fine. I got the definition right. I didn't, get that wrong feedback. But people do tend to twist words and twist things. And that's why it's so important to captivate your thoughts and think about what you're thinking so that you can have that head, invite those thoughts in and say, okay, what is it saying to me? Do I believe this? Is it true? And then realizing what's the response that I'm getting, and does it come from this person? Is this person out of alignment with me, or is it my own take on things? Is it my own evaluation, my own belief system? And then what do I want to do? Do I want to get away from this person? Do I want to talk it out with this person? Like, what's the conversation going to look like? What's my next step? And that process, it took me a long time to get that. I do it right away now. But when I first started doing it, it took like 25 minutes. It took so long, people would say, did you hear what I said? I'm like, yeah, I'm just processing. Can you give me a moment? Because I'm just really struggling with this right now.
Lisa, how can people get a hold of you and talk to you about coaching? Or, I mean, your book's easy to get, but outside of that, what's the best way for people to find you and connect with you? And who are the women that you are looking for? Who are your people to coach?
My people are ambitious Christian female entrepreneurs who want to stop the vicious cycle of self-abuse from having, abortions and never healing from that emotional healing that they're looking for, or any past mistakes they may have been. They may have been in a situation where they were in a narcissist relationship. They may have gotten divorced and took it out on their kids and didn't have a good relationship and transfer all of that pain onto their, and think, oh, I'm not a good mom, I'm not a good this, I'm not a good that. But somebody who's really ready to get the healing, to put in the work, somebody who's ready to step out of that victim mode and really do what it takes. They get to do this transformation and they want it because they know their purpose, and they want to live out their passion, and they want to tap into their gifts and their talents and show up in the marketplace for their clients. And they know something's stopping them, but they can't quite put the finger on it. So when we can dive deep into it, when they're going to give themselves permission to heal and dive deep into it, that's when they're going to see the peace and the joy. The best way to contact me is I'm on Facebook, um, Lisa Drennan. My website, you can go to lisadrennan.com and you can book a free consult with me. Um, that's probably the best two ways to get to me.
Thank you so much for being on today. I appreciate you sharing.
Well, thank you for having me. It was an honor, and I felt totally comfortable speaking with you. And so, thank you for that experience. It's like that calming, very calming experience. Very very natural.
Thank you.